We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you as always by the great people at Alumni Hall. Make sure to check them out for the best selection of Georgia gear, hands down, that you're going to find anywhere. And guys, you only got a couple weeks left before the season kicks off, so get that taken care of right now. Alumni Hall has got you covered. But today on the show, I am going to detail why Georgia football's 2025 recruiting class will not only make a major impact on the 2025 Bulldog football team, but may just lay the foundation for Georgia's next national championship run. So we're gonna dive all into that today, guys. But before we get there, if you are a diehard Georgia fan, go ahead, you know the drill. Subscribe right now, turn those notifications on. Everything we do here, guys, truly is designed for all you diehard fans who want to have a place where you can come and get content truly designed for you. And that's what we do here at the Glory UJ podcast. So subscribe, hit those notifications, like, comment, all that great stuff, guys. We hit 3,000 subscribers about 2 weeks ago, which was huge. That was our goal by the time the season started. Now we're on to a new goal, trying to reach 3,500, and we're on our way, guys. But we need your help to get to that number. All right. About a month ago, July 10th to be exact, I went back and looked it up. I published an episode ranking Georgia's top 5 impact freshman candidates ahead of the 2025 season. That was part of the top 5 series that I ran throughout the summer months. And on that episode, my top 5 impact freshman candidates for Georgia were number 5, Talon Taylor, number 4, fellow freshman wide receiver, C.J. Wiley, number 3, offensive lineman, Juan Gaston, number 2, running back, Bo Walker, and number 1, defensive lineman, top 10 player nationally, top 5 player nationally, number 1 ranked defensive tackle in this 2025 class, Elijah Griffin. Now, to this day, I stand by all of those players that made that list. I kind of like the ranking right now. I'd probably flip Taylor and Wiley. Taylor got off to a faster start during the early parts of fall camp. It's more polished coming as a freshman. Wiley might have a higher long-term ceiling, but they're both really talented players. I think they're both going to play for us. I would probably move Gaston, probably number 1 right now, because I think of those 5, he's probably the most likely to start. But I like the 5. I think those are the 5 guys that will likely make the biggest impact on this Georgia football team, are certainly in that conversation. But as I look back on that ranking, now, a little bit more than a month later, it's clear, guys. That list, while I stand by it, based on what I saw at practice of the spring, what I saw at G-Day, and what I knew of opportunities at those positions, I stand by that. But it's clear that list is woefully insufficient as we sit here less than 2 weeks out from the start of the 2025 season. Because after what I continue to hear, and what has continued to be reported throughout the course of fall camp, combined, again, with what I saw myself at practice during the spring, what I saw at G-Day during the spring, it is becoming increasingly clear, like day by day, that this 2025 Georgia freshman class is going to have, yes, a monster impact on the 2025 Georgia football team, but might actually do more than that down the road. And look, I thought this freshman class would be good, could be good to very good. It would help us in 2025. But now, like, we're beyond that point. We're beyond that point, and it's looking like this 2025 class has a chance to be outright special, guys, and that's huge. Again, with that immediate impact being felt not only down the road, certainly in years to come, but immediately right now, in the here and now, with this 2025 Georgia football team. And all the buzz around this 2025 freshman class, and I myself am certainly guilty of kind of pumping them up based on what I saw with my own 2 eyes and what I continue to hear, but it got me thinking, how many impact freshmen do we have on a typical year, right? Like, you know the Brock Bowers of the world, we know the Malachi Starks of the world, we know the KJ Bolds of the world, like those guys make impacts, and they're the headliners, right? But beyond those headliners, the obvious answers there, how many players, how many freshmen make a legitimate impact in year 1 for Georgia on an annual basis? So I went back, guys, I crunched numbers. I did this for you. Y'all don't have to do the heavy lifting. I went back and did this for you guys. And the answer to that question is, not many. All right. So here are the numbers for you. So this is from 2021 through 2024. So it's 4 classes prior to this year. On average, there are 4.5 players per year over that 4-year span that play at least 10% of Georgia's offensive or defensive snaps. I'm not counting special team snaps. I'm counting offensive and defensive snaps. So 10% of snaps, about 4.5 a year is what we average. When you go up to 20% of our defensive or offensive snaps, we've averaged over the last 4 seasons 2.75 year 1 players making that type of impact, playing at least 20% of our snaps. And we've only averaged 1.75, so a little less than 2 players per year per freshman class over the last 4 cycles that have played at least 30% of our offensive or defensive snaps. But when you look back at this 2025 class, again, based on what I have seen myself and what I continue to hear through the course of fall camp, those numbers that we've seen the last 4 cycles, and I use 4 cycles, guys, because I want to have a larger sample size. I didn't want to just use the 2024 class because like that, any given class, it's a small sample size. Things could be skewed, things could be weird. That's why I went with a 4-year sample size, right? Like a full team essentially coming in and leaving the program. And if you look at the players that we have in this 2025 class, those numbers stand to be doubled across the board in this 2025 class. So if you look at the guys that I think could play at least 10% of our snaps, I think we got 9 guys. I think we got 9 guys that could play at least 10% of our snaps. I think we got 6 guys that end up playing at least 20%, or certainly in that conversation. And I think we have potentially 5 to 6 guys that could play 30% of our snaps. So if you're skeptical, I hear you, because I know, like, with freshmen, you don't really know until you know. Like, seeing it at spring practice is one thing, seeing it at G-Day is one thing, hearing good things about them at fall camp is one thing, but it's a totally different deal to do it on the field against real competition, certainly when we get to SEC play week 3 in Knoxville. But let me run through the guys in this 2025 class that I believe have a legitimate chance to make an impact year 1 for Georgia. I got 9 guys that I think can play at least 10% of our snaps this year. Number 1, you got to start with Elijah Griffin. Again, the highest rated player in this 2025 Georgia class. 5-star guy, top 5 player nationally, number 1 defensive tackle in the country. I don't think Elijah Griffin is going to start this year. I have 0 expectations that will end up happening. Why? Because I like what we have with the veterans on that interior defensive line. Because he's a 3-tech guy all the way. Could he slide outside and play some 5-tech situationally? Yeah, he has the athleticism to do that, but he's much more of a true 3-tech defensive tackle in our scheme. And you look at a guy like Christian Miller, who is now in his final year of eligibility. He's done a lot of good things for Georgia, played a lot for Georgia. I think the world of Christian Miller. I think he's going to have a huge final year at Georgia and potentially put himself in first, second round conversations. I believe that. I know not everyone's on board with that, but I've seen enough to think with a full, healthy year of being that guy, Christian Miller could certainly find himself in that range. I love Xavier McLeod. When Miller went down with an injury late last year, McLeod's reps increased late in the season in some really meaningful games, and I loved what I saw from him. And that was his first full year of being in a college program. He was at South Carolina in 23, but for half the season before he left. And, I really like the disruption he showed, rushing the passer, creating havoc in the backfield, creating negative plays. That was a sight to see late in the season against some really, really good teams. So I think both those guys are going to play a lot for Georgia. I like them at the 3-tech. But Elijah Griffin is too good to not play, guys. He's going to play. And certainly when you consider how much we rotate on the defensive line, ideally, if you go back and you look at Kirby Smart defenses year after year, ideally, we want even our best defensive linemen to play 30-ish% of our defensive snaps. Like Jordan Davis in 2021, guys, played 29% of our defensive snaps, under 30%. And that guy was an All-American caliber player, a first-round draft pick. So that's the sweet spot. We want those guys to be able to go full speed when they're in there. And when you're that big and you're playing 70% of our snaps, which some of our guys like Christian Miller were forced into early last year because we just had so many injuries up front early on in the season, it's tough. It's tough to go all out, down in, down out. It's tough to sustain that at that size. So for that reason, we rotate a lot, and Elijah Griffin is going to be in that rotation. Now, how much he plays, that remains to be seen. But at 10%, come on, guys. Elijah Griffin, barring injury, knock on wood, is going to play at least 10% of Georgia snaps this year. I have 0 doubt about that. If he doesn't hit that number, I should probably quit the podcast. Like I don't know how he could not. Again, barring injury, because I think he's that good. I think his snaps are only going to increase as the season progresses. And God forbid, like, I mean, I hate to even put it out there in the universe, but like, injuries happen, especially the defensive line in the trenches. We saw it last year. We were decimated up front. We had like 3 guys the first like quarter or so of this first third, maybe first quarter of the season last year, playing like 70% of the snaps each, with Christian Miller, TID on the outside, the 5 tech, and Nazir Stackhouse at the 3. So there could be injuries to guys ahead of him. I mean, Christian Miller, love him, just got his shoulder cleaned up in the offseason. Hopefully he's good. He's good to go allegedly, but you never know, those things can pop back up. So it could be an injury that forces him into even more playing time. He's going to play. I feel very, very confident in that. I believe, I said it many times, I'll say it again for you here, I'm a believer that Elijah Griffin is the next great Georgia interior defensive lineman, and that could come as quickly as this year, guys. That wouldn't shock me. Next, we've got Juan Gaston. I think he's probably the most, at this point, based on what we know, the most likely player in this 2025 Georgia recruiting class to start week 1. I think he's going to be the guy that gets a start earlier than anybody else. And that's because we had a little bit of an open spot there at right guard. Daniel Calhoun was the guy coming into the spring, got banged up about halfway through spring practice. You guys heard me talk about this. And then that opened the door for, and I got corrected on how to pronounce this. I know he's Polynesian. Oeni? All right, not Ueni. I think it's Oeni. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how I was corrected. So if I butcher that again, I'm sorry. But Michael Yu, at this point, maybe, does he get the DJ Yu treatment? I don't know. But he was working with the ones, and so was Juan Gaston at right guard. I saw him as a tackle coming in, and I think long-term he is going to be more of a tackle, but we're pretty set there with Monroe Freeling at left tackle and Ernest Green at right tackle. I still have some questions about Ernest, but apparently he's in incredible shape, and he has played a lot of football for Georgia going into his 3rd consecutive year as the starter, at least going into the season. I do think we're going to get the best version of Ernest this year. So there's not as many opportunities at tackle, and when Gaston is apparently as talented as he is, I'd love to coming out of high school, you got to find a place for him, right? Because your best 5 on the field. You always say that. And it looks like right guard might be that obvious spot. And each of the 2 fall scrimmages, he has opened the scrimmages with the number 1 offense as a starter at right guard. So when you look at that, now we still have like a week and a half until the season gets here. Yes, that's true. Things can happen, sure. But guys, he started both scrimmages. And that's as close as we get to a game, like simulating a game before we get to game 1. Like if you started the first scrimmage and not the second, it's like, okay, maybe they're rotating different guys a chance. But when he started both of them, like how can you look at that any other way than saying the guy's going to start, barring something crazy happening? I do believe there's going to be a rotation. There's probably a 3-man rotation at least at guard like we've had the past couple years. But I think Juan's going to start, guys. Like I feel pretty strongly about that based on what I'm hearing, just based on me like reading the tea leaves here. So that's a guy, if he starts, he's obviously going to play at least 10% of our snaps. Okay, of course, again, all these guys is barring injury. Then you come to number 3, Bo Walker. Like he was generating crazy buzz like from the jump back in the spring. I did an episode, I think like the first week of spring practice saying, guys, I'm hearing crazy things about him. I went to practice myself. I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and I came back and told you, like, guys, the hype is real. The buzz is real. Like this is not just a one-day deal. This guy is legit, and I thought he had a chance to play this year for George, like meaningful snaps back in the spring, and that's not died down. He continues to do big things, generate buzz throughout the course of fall camp, doing some big things at the scrimmages out there. I think he's got a shot to be the number 2 back. I thought it would be the transfer McCray coming from Illinois, but he wasn't here for the spring, learning a new system. And then to open fall camp, he was sick, missed the first weekish or so of practice, and that sets you back even more. And then a guy like Bo Walker just keeps making plays, keeps opening eyes, keeps making his case. So I think there's a legit shot that Bo might be the second back. Now, Chauncey Bowens has done some good things in scrimmage settings and the G-Day setting, but I don't hear as much about him on a consistent basis, like practice after practice, week after week. He just seems to be a guy that shows up on game day, like when we have those things. And hey, there's something to be said for that. I think he'll probably factor in too. And I've heard some good things about Peanut, about Dwight Phillips Jr. But right now, if I had to predict right now, I might say Bo Walker as a number 2 back. And I will do my final depth chart projection for you guys here in the coming days before the start of the season. So we'll definitely dive into that a little bit more. But whether it's the number 2 back, number 3 back, Bo is going to play like real snaps. And he's going to get more than 10% of our snaps. I have zero question about that. And then you come to JJ Hanna, who's the guy who's kind of been the surprise of the fall for me. I told you guys when we landed him, I did a video exclusively about his commitment back like last summer, probably about 13 or so months ago when he committed. And I was like, all right, guys, look, he's raw. He's new to football, comes over from Germany. He's only been playing football for a couple of years, so he ain't there yet. But if you look at the tape and you look at the physical tools this guy has and how good he is, even how good he was at that stage, even only playing football for a year or two, it's like, oh my God, how good can this guy be? It was tantalizing, right? So you look at me like, okay, yeah, he's not quite fully there yet, but give this guy a year or two, some developmental time in our system, and his best football is very clearly ahead of him. But I did not anticipate him being ready year one as a true freshman. I didn't see it, guys. I wasn't prepared for that. I thought he was the guy, based on what I had seen on tape, that, yes, had the raw tools, but would need some time, would take some seasoning, like needed some developmental years, and give him a year or two could absolutely be an impact player for Georgia, like a difference maker type guy. But I thought it would take some time. Apparently not. Apparently not. Apparently he's just one of those guys that plays with that fire, passion, energy. He continues to have that blue Guardian cap on his head, which, it signifies guys that are out there playing with that fire, passion, energy. That is the mantra of this year's football team. And he's getting legitimate reps with the number one defense. And I'm not telling you he's going to start. I don't think that he is. But just like with Gaston, 2 scrimmages in a row, he hasn't started like Gaston at that 5-tech defensive end position, but he's rotating in liberally, early and often, with the number one defense. 2 scrimmages in a row. That means something, guys. Those scrimmages are important to Kirby Smart. It's not a charity case out there. He's just throwing guys in. Let's see what this guy does with number one. It's like, no. You got to earn that. You got to be part of the plans to be working with the number one offense or number one defense in this case, in both of those scrimmages. Hanna is going to play a lot for Georgia this year. I think him and Joseph Jonah-Janye are going to be big factors there. Gabe Harris is going to move around situationally, 5-tech sometimes, jack linebacker sometimes, but Hanna's going to play. And him stepping up like this is going to free us up to move Gabe Harris around a little bit more. So that's an added impact that he adds to this team as well. Then you get to the receivers, the freshmen. Look, we have a number of guys. I've heard good things about all of them. I've heard good things about Landon Roldan. I've heard some really good things about Thomas Blackshear coming in late as a summer enrollee. I've heard good things about all these guys. But the 2 that I continue to hear about most frequently and most enthusiastically, I guess is how I would phrase this, are Talon Taylor and CJ Wiley. Taylor from Illinois, Wiley from here in Georgia, Milton High School, big-time high school program. Right? I think back-to-back state titles, at least 3 in a row? No, I think it's back-to-back and they're going for 3 this year. Yeah, I think that's the case. But regardless, these guys are dudes. They're dudes, okay? And they were doing big things during the spring. Yeah, their heads were spinning, but even though they were young and they were still learning and their heads were spinning at times, they were far more advanced and further ahead than where I typically see freshman receivers during their first spring on campus. Yeah, they were learning, but they were further ahead. Like, they were more advanced than you typically see. And I expect that from Taylor, because that was a guy that was a technician at the high school level. His route running ability as a high school player was almost unprecedented in terms of like guys that I've seen. Like, there's a lot of great receivers out there, and a lot of them just out-athlete you, but like the technical aspects of his game, creating separation by running routes, whoo, man, he's certainly up there. The guys that I've seen, I've been following recruiting religiously for a long time, guys. And also a plus athlete on top of that. Wiley is a guy that's got all the physical tools in the world. Not as polished coming in, but in terms of his size, length, leaping ability, athleticism, all of that, off the charts. So I expect that both those guys to play a role on this team, but you never know, like, what does that mean? Are they going to get spot duty here and there? Are they going to be a regular part of the rotation? Does that happen right away? Does that happen midseason, later in the year? Like, when does this happen? Guys, it's going to happen early. It's going to. Talon Taylor, spring, fall, has been a mainstay among the people that I talk to and who they bring up. Right? When they're telling me, like, hey, this guy's standing out. Talon Taylor's always in that conversation. CJ Wiley was a lot in the spring. Not as much to start the fall, but his name has really become more prominent over the past week or two. And I told you earlier in the week, the dude just straight up lit it up during the second scrimmage. Like 200 to 250 yards, somewhere in that range. I've heard varying reports, but all of them agree at least 200 yards receiving, multiple big explosive plays. That's what this guy brings to the table. Big play waiting to happen. 50-50 guy, explosive playmaker. When you have guys that talented, you got to play them. right? And you know how much we rotate a receiver. I'm under no illusions that Taylor or Wiley are going to be our top guys at receiver this year. I mean, it's not inconceivable. It could happen, but highly unlikely. I fully expect it to be Zachariah Branch in the slot and Noah Thomas and Colby Young out there in Z and X. Okay, that's my expectation. But they're not going to play 100% of our snaps. We rotate a lot at receiver every year. It's just something we do. Sometimes it drives me crazy. Sometimes I think we do a little too much. I have guys on the field that probably shouldn't see as much of the field as they do. But this year, it's going to be a little different. Guys like Talon Taylor, CJ Wiley, they need to be on the field because they are going to make plays for Georgia. And 10% of our snaps, yes, they're going to hit that number. Now, another guy that I did an episode on, about 2 weeks ago, first week of fall camp, was the freshman that was really kind of jumping out the first week of fall camp, and that was DB Rayshawn Diggins. So I know I did a full episode on him. You can go back and check out more of a deep dive on him. But I was surprised by that because he was not an early enrollee. He was a summer enrollee. I loved his tape coming out of high school. The guy will light you up. But as a summer enrollee, it's tougher, right? Because you're going through that learning process with the other freshmen, the early enrollees. I think we had like 24, 25 early enrollees. They went through that back in the spring, back in March and April. And now they're ready to hit the ground running, like making an actual move for like legit playing time. Whereas a guy like Dinkins coming in the summer, it's like, okay, well, he's just got to learn right now. It's not so much about like trying to make a move for playing time. It's about just like getting familiar with what's going on out there. Well, apparently this guy's learning curve was like basically nothing. Because like from week one, this guy was opening eyes out there. And I again, it's kind of like, you go back to Elijah Griffin. I have no expectation that Rayshawn Dinkins is going to start this year because like Janelle Aguero's had a really strong spring, and I think Dinkins is more of a star, can play safety, but I think he's more of a star in our scheme. I think his body type kind of lends itself to that position. They're hard to find, but he could certainly play a role in our defense. And again, we've had injuries. I think he might be the next guy up at that star position. There's still some guys competing there, but he certainly put himself in that conversation. I could see a world, especially when you have like 3 games this year against like baby seals out there. Hopefully, ideally, I know it didn't so much happen last year, we will get chances to play a lot of these young guys a lot of snaps in those games. And so by nature, playing 3 games like that, he might hit 10% of our snaps in those 3 games. Like maybe playing the whole fourth quarter or half the third quarter and fourth quarter, easily can hit that number. So I think he's a guy, based on what I hear and how he continues to impress, could easily be a 10% guy, 10% snap guy. And then the last 2 here, I'm not as confident they'll hit 10%, but I still think they're in the conversation. They got a shot here. And that's the freshman tight ends. I love both of them. And they're different. They're different players. So Elias Williams, Camden County, Ethan Barbour, another Milton High School guy. Elias is a different dude. He's one of those unicorns, more in the vein of Caden Prothro, but a little bigger, thicker than Prothro is. But like Prothro, he basically played receiver in high school at Camden County. So I questioned, okay, what's your role at Georgia? Especially as a freshman. Is your body going to be ready to play tight end? Like even if that's like an H-back mover tight end role. I don't see him as an inline guy, but can you even like function effectively in any way, shape, or form as a blocker? Are you ready to do that? Because he basically didn't do any of that as a high school guy. He was out there running routes playing receiver. Like that's what the guy was doing. Or do we maybe like give you a shot at like a jumbo X receiver? It looks like that's not in the works right now because we're just loaded at receiver this year. So tight end seems to be where he's getting more of his reps. And it was very much a work in progress for him in the spring. He showed some flashes, but the fall, guys, has been different for him. Like he's much more comfortable playing actual tight end. Because again, he didn't do it in high school, certainly as a senior. And so the spring was about him just learning how to function in that role. And he learned, man. And he's still got a ways to go, clearly, but he's much more comfortable in that role than he was in the spring. And he's been a guy that I've heard brought up more consistently throughout the course of fall camp as a guy that's just making plays out there. Still growing, still learning, still developing, but it's a guy that I think can help us. Certainly in like situational roles in the red zone, when you have a guy at 6'7", stands to reason you might want to have him out there just to maybe throw the ball up to him and see what he can go and do. Not only is he 6'7", he's just a big physical 240-ish pound guy out there. Hard to cover a guy like that with his athleticism. So I think he's got a shot to play a lot of snaps for Georgia this year and get to like 10%. I don't see him as like a 20, 30% guy, but 10%, yeah, I can see that happening. And then Ethan Barbour, The guy from Milton, different, not as tall, not as rangy as Elias Williams, but certainly much more of a polished tight end coming out of high school. I think he's maybe better with a ball in his hands in space. More of a, I don't want to say true tight ends. I think he could play in line for us. I also see him more as an H-back guy, like a mover tight end as well. But I think he's just more of a polished pass catcher, playing that tight end position. Certainly more effective as a blocker at this point, even though he doesn't have as big of a frame. He just did it more at the high school level. So coming in, I always thought of both those guys, like which one of those guys could play maybe more for George as a freshman at tight end. I thought it would be Barbour. Not because his ceiling is as high long term, although I do think he has a really high ceiling. I mean, Williams' ceiling is just off the charts, guys. Like we're talking like bananas, unicorn level stuff. But I just thought he was more polished and might be ready to make more of an impact year one, right? But Williams is really coming along, and I'm having to rethink that right now. Now, I will say, I think it's unlikely that both those guys will hit 10% of our offensive snaps this year. That's unlikely. But could one of them? Yes, I think probably. Now, yeah, we play a lot of 12 personnel, but we have some guys ahead of them. That's my only holdup here, right? Is you've got guys like Lawson Lucky, Oscar Dupp, and Jaden Riddell. It also has had a huge spring. It's had a really good fall camp as well. He's going to be our number 3 tight end to start the season. I do believe that. But I think Elias, again, is going to have a role situationally. And if he comes in and plays well, maybe he eats into some of those snaps. Same thing with Barbour. If you get some opportunities and he plays well and he produces, maybe he starts eating those snaps. I just think those guys are both so talented that if they get opportunities, I think they're going to make plays. And if you start to make plays, then you start to eat into people's snaps. So again, I don't think both of them will play 10% of our snaps, but I think at least one of them will. And you got 2 wild cards here that if I'm not sure about Williams and Barbour right now, I'm less sure about these guys. But considering the depth concerns we have at the jack linebacker position, which are being alleviated to a degree with the emergence of a guy like Chris Jones, who opened the second scrimmage of the fall on Saturday, as I told you guys, with the number 1 defense as that guy at the jack position. You got Elo Mendoza, who brought in from Army, Quintavious Johnson. We've got some guys that have been in the system for a little while. Not that Mendoza has. He's new. He's still learning. But we have some really talented young guys that can also play on the edge for us. We got Isaiah Gibson, 5-star guy in the 2025 class, who I've had some questions about where he plays long term. Is he more of a 5-tech or more of a jack? Is he one of those guys in the vein of Michael Williams and maybe like a Gabe Harris, who is a versatile guy that can play both positions situationally and you move him around a little bit? I think so, because Gibson's a bigger guy. He was like 260 plus coming out of high school, guys. Like we don't usually play jack linebackers that are that big. Our jacks are usually like in the 240 to 250-ish range. Guys that are like 260 to 285, those are more 5-techs for us. And that's what he was come into college, and they usually only get bigger and stronger and bulk up with a year in the weight program and the nutrition program, all of that. So I could see him play more of a situational role. I haven't heard as much about him this fall. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't heard him generating a lot of buzz. I heard some things at times about him in the spring, and when I saw him, like, you see the potential, but he was still raw, still learning. A guy that I have heard a little bit of buzz about that wasn't as highly rated, but still one of the top guys in this class, is Darren Ikenigbon. I think I always butcher that name, but we're going to go with Ikenigbon right now. He's a guy that's got some explosiveness off the edge. He's a true jack. And again, I don't think he's going to be the starter. He's not. I don't think he's going to be the number 2 and probably not the number 3 guy to open the season. But could he find a role at times? Yeah, he could. Again, if you get opportunities in these first 2 weeks and you produce, that's only going to enhance the number of reps you see in the future. And I believe the guy is really, really talented. So I'm not confident that either one of those guys can see 10% of our defensive snaps. But again, when you play 3 baby seals out there, that increases your opportunities, increases the chances you get there. And if you have injuries, again, like that jack linebacker spot, we're not nearly as deep there this year as we were a year ago. We're getting better there. We're developing guys there, but we're still not quite as deep. We don't have guys as firmly entrenched in that spot as we did a year ago. So do they have a shot? Yeah, maybe. So guys, I think like 8 to 9 and maybe an outside shot at more than that, players in this 2025 class that could hit 10% of our offensive defensive snaps. And that's compared to, on average, over the last 4 cycles, 4.5 players per year. We could easily, and I believe that we will, likely double that total. Now, what about the guys that can play 20% of our defensive or offensive snaps? So again, last 4 cycles, we've averaged 2.75 freshmen a year that have played at least 20% of our snaps. Guys, I think we have at least 6 that could play 20-ish% of our snaps. Griffin, I feel good right now saying he's probably going to play 20% of our snaps. I believe that. I could be wrong. I believe it. Gaston, I think he's going to start. If he starts, he's definitely playing 20% of our snaps. JJ Hanna, if he's working the number one defense in both scrimmages, the guy is going to play 20% of our snaps. Bo Walker, I think even if he is not the number 2 back, even if he's the number 3 back to open the season, probably going to play 20% of our snaps. Like, guys, the buzz has been too real for too long of a period. It's been too sustained for me to not believe that, right? And I've seen it too. I've seen my own 2 eyes. The guy can play. Just trust me on that. Maybe not the guy is going to be who stands out in like the underwear Olympics in a combine setting, but the dude's just a football player. And give me those guys all day long, man. Give me those guys all day long. So he's going to play, I think, 20% of our snaps. I think Taylor and Wiley, this is where I have the question. Can both of them play 20% of our snaps? I think they play different positions. So Wiley's more of an X. Taylor's more of a Z. Could also play in the slot, but I think he's more of a Z. So could they both play 20% of our snaps? Yeah. I mean, guys, if you look at it last year, so I went back and crunched these numbers. I was curious. Okay, so the guy I kind of compared them to coming into this year, I know it's not apples to apples because London Humphreys was a year 2 guy last year. He was a sophomore. He was a freshman at Vandy in 2023. But London Humphreys played 35% of our offensive snaps last year. 35%. He was our number 4 wide receiver, right? He was our 7th leading receiver on the year, but in terms of like actual wide receivers, he was our 4th leading wide receiver last year. He played 35% of our snaps, and he missed 2 full games. Okay? So if he played 35% of our snaps last year as our 4th guy out there, could Taylor and or Wiley hit 20% of our snaps this year? Absolutely. I think at least one of them will. Because you look at who's ahead of them. Okay, you've got Colby Young, obviously. Noah, obviously. You got Zachariah Branch, yeah. Dylan Bell, yes and no. Dylan, yeah, if he plays receiver, but Dylan's going to move around. Dylan's going to do different things, right? He's going to play different roles for us. He's going to be in that, like, I hate this comparison, but kind of, I guess it fits, Deebo Samuel-ish role for us this year. Like, just, he's that kind of player for us. So, I don't know like how much receiver he's going to play. He did open G-Day as the slot. I think it's going to be Zachariah Branch now, based on what he's done in the fall. He's just torn it up all fall long. So, like, okay, so let's say for argument's sake, it's Dylan Bell. All right, the London Humphreys. So that's 5. So we're looking at Walker or Taylor and Wiley probably being like maybe our 5th or 6th guys potentially at receiver, maybe 7th. But if you're in that range with as much as we rotate at those positions, again, you always have to factor for injury, I think they have put themselves in position to earn real snaps. And I think 20% for at least one of them is a very realistic possibility. Maybe not for both of them, but I think for at least one of them. So I think 5 to 6 there can get 20% of the snaps, and then 30% of the snaps. This is where like you separate yourself. So we had, on average, over the last 4 cycles, 1.75 freshmen per year that played at least 30% of our offensive or defensive snaps, right? Not counting special team stuff. Well, this year, guys, I mean, okay, Juan Gaston, if he does indeed start, even if he doesn't, even if he's in a rotation, he's going to play 30% of our snaps. Again, all this is all barring injury. Injury is going to like derail everything, of course, but barring injury, if everyone stays healthy, does he play 30% of our snaps? I feel confident saying yes. Does Elijah Griffin? I think he could. I think it's close. Again, I think ideally we want the guys that are in our rotation on defensive line to play like 30-ish% of our snaps. Problem for him is, though, I think that both McLeod and Miller are ahead of him right now at the 3-tech spot. Could Griffin change that by how he plays this season? Yes, he could. I love Miller. I really like McLeod. I think those guys are really, really good. But Griffin is just different. Yes, he's young, and I'm very hesitant. Usually, I'm kind of breaking my own rule here. I'm very hesitant most years to go too far predicting guys that play on the lines of scrimmage to make impacts year 1 because you're going against grown men. It's just hard. The closer you are to line of scrimmage, the harder it is, in my opinion, for you to make an impact as a freshman. But again, Griffin's a dude. He's just different, man. He's just built different. So he's going to play. I feel confident he'll get 20%, 30%. I don't know. It might take an injury to one of the guys ahead of him for him to hit that number, but he's got a shot. I think he'll be close, right around that 30% number. Bo Walker, yeah, I think 30%. If he's our number 2 back, which he has a real shot at being, 30% is a very real number. Like we had, and I know that Etienne missed half the year last year. I mean, 5 games last year, so almost half the year. But if you look at the numbers, like the carry distribution and the yardage distribution between Etienne and Nate Frazier a year ago, it was essentially split. It was almost equal, right? Nate ended up being our leading rusher, barely, but it was very, very close there. So if he is our number 2 back, 30% of our snaps, yes. Now, he's not going to play third downs. That's the Cash Jones down, right? Cash, you got to factor Cash in there. But standard downs, first and second down, we rotate backs, guys. We rotate backs between series, within series, and Bo is going to be a part of that rotation. Even if he's not the number 2 guy to open the season, he's going to play a lot. So I think 30% is a very realistic chance for Bo Walker. Again, I think maybe one of Wiley or Taylor have a shot to hit 30% of our offensive snaps. That's less likely, but I think one of them has a shot. I see no war where both of them do, but one of them has a shot there. Right now, I'd say probably I lean more towards Taylor because I just heard more about him consistently. I know Wiley was the one that just showed out on Saturday most recently, but Taylor's been more consistent throughout the course of fall camp. So I'd lean Taylor there. That's unlikely, though. Less likely than the other ones. And then last up, Hana at 5 tech. Yes, guys, I think there's a real chance he can play 30% of our defensive snaps. I think there's a real chance. Because I also think situationally he can slide inside at times. Like you get to third downs, that's a guy that's got some twitch, man, in that 5 tech body. Could he slide inside? Yeah, he could. So I think with 3 guys kind of playing that 5 tech spot with him, Joseph Jonah-Janye, and also you got the swing guy and Gabe Harris playing some 5 tech. I think there's 30% of those snaps there for Hana to end up playing at that 5 tech spot. So how many do I feel comfortable with playing 30% of our snaps this year of this freshman class? Probably 4, Gaston, Griffin, Walker, and Hana, but I think Wiley and or Taylor have a shot there, an outside shot, but a shot, I guess, theoretically, to do that as well. But even if it's only 4 guys, that's more than double what we've averaged the past 4 cycles. And look, guys, yeah, I know what a lot of you are thinking and saying right now. I'll say it out loud for you. Yes, right now, when I'm talking about the freshman class, guys who have not played a down of real football for Georgia in the red and black between the hedges, right now it's all just potential. I readily acknowledge that, guys. I recognize that. It's all just buzz. Right now it's all just projection. We do have to see it on the field. Of course, that should go without saying. No doubt about it. But I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show, guys. I have seen it with my own 2 eyes during the spring in multiple settings. I continue to hear it from people that I trust that rarely lead me wrong in these things. And it continues to be echoed in various reports out there. There's just so many sources, guys. It's not just one thing I'm hearing. I'm hearing it from every possible direction. Almost every conversation I have, every report I read, what I've seen with my own 2 eyes, it just seems too real. And you know what they say about smoke and fire, right? And right now, this 2025 Georgia recruiting class, it's just not looking like its immediate predecessors, the last 4 cycles. Right now, it's actually shaping up to look a lot more like the 2019 recruiting class that laid the foundation for back-to-back national titles with players like Nolan Smith and George Pickens and Trayvon Walker and Nakobe Dean and Lewis Seen, just to name a few. If you go back to that 2019 class, okay, that class had 7 freshmen that played at least 10% of our offensive defensive snaps, had 8 guys that played at least 20% of our offensive defensive snaps, had 2 players that played at least 30% of our snaps. So I just laid out for you guys what I think about this 2025 class and who I think has a chance to play 10 and 20 and 30% of our snaps. Now, we've got to retain them. We got to retain them long term, okay? We got to keep them healthy. We got to keep them on the roster. But like that 2019 class, this 2025 class in combination with an excellent 2024 class too, by the way, as a number of players that maybe didn't make an instant impact year 1 guys like Justin Williams, but have guys that are poised in year 2 to break out and be big-time players. Chris Cole played like 11% of our snaps last year, but he's obviously in line for a much bigger role. So if you combine this stellar 2025 class, at least what has the makings of being a stellar 2025 class, with an excellent 2024 class, you have a situation where not only is this current class in 2025 going to make a major impact this season, but it could form the foundation of Georgia football's next national championship run. So I'm excited, guys. I think we should all be excited. Again, yeah, we got to see it. We got to see it, but there's just so much buzz out there. There's too much smoke to ignore right now. But we'll find out, guys. We'll find out here in less than 2 weeks. Let's freaking go. It's just around the corner. But thank you guys so much for being here. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for your support. If you are a diehard Georgia fan, This is a deep dive, right? This is the kind of content that you can expect on this channel. This is what we do, guys. We truly do produce content designed for all you diehards. This is not for the casual fan. This is for hardcore fans. So if that is you, go ahead, subscribe right now, turn those notifications on, like the video, comment. Let me know what you think. Am I off base here? Am I crazy? Like, am I taking crazy pills right now? Maybe. Maybe somebody needs to bring me back down to earth. And that's all right. If you think that's the case, let me know, guys. I'd love to hear from you. But thank you again for being here. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.